Voice Italia, Philadelphia.
Class is now in session. Christopher Columbus University is on air from Philadelphia and broadcasting worldwide from within the shadow of Marconi Plaza. Radio Voice Italia is proud to present a recurring segment with civil rights author, professional researcher, and renowned Christopher Columbus expert, Robert Felix Petrone, Esquire.
Buongiorno tutti, and welcome to Radio Voice Italia's Christopher Columbus University, where we teach you the truth about the greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, Christopher Columbus, and update you on the international efforts to preserve Christopher Columbus's legacy. I'm your host, il professore, Robert Petrone. Today on our Christopher Columbus University segment, I would like to update the listeners on the efforts around the country and indeed around the world to preserve Christopher Columbus's legacy and the fight to keep his statues in place, to keep his holiday on the books. And so to that end, I'm gonna talk about some things that are going on locally and abroad even. But before I do that, I would like to ask all who are listening right now to grab a pen and something to write on, a piece of paper, because in a few minutes after I give my little preamble, I'm going to give you folks a website that I would like all Pennsylvania residents to go to. If you're listening from outside of Pennsylvania, please pass this on to anyone you may know within Pennsylvania. This will only work for Pennsylvania residents. And so you've got a few minutes, so please get up and get those materials while I'm talking, and then I'll give you the website. So we've got some good news to talk about today. We've got some bad news to talk about today. And we've got some local news. And to bring you the local news, we have a special guest on today's program, Mr. Matthew Minsky, Esquire, of the Bochetto Lentz law firm here in Philadelphia. So we've got a wonderful show for you today, and it's going to be full of information. So speaking of information, if you have your pen and paper handy, please write down the following website address. I'm about to give you a 22-character string that you'll need to just type into your web browser, and it's got to be exactly as I recite it to you. Capitalization matters, so please assume that all letters are lowercase unless I specify otherwise. Also, there is a colon in this string of characters, and don't confuse it with the semicolon. This is the two dots, one on top of the other. And there are also a couple of times in this string of characters where I'm going to say the word slash. And I'm referring to not the horizontal dash, but the diagonal line that sort of slopes upward to your right. That's what I mean by slash, okay? So please write down the following 22 characters to either go to this website yourself or to pass on to any Pennsylvanians you know. Here it is. H as in Harry, T as in Tom, T again as in Tom, P as in Peter, S as in Samuel, colon, slash, another slash, P as in Peter, the number 2, A as in Albert, dot meaning period, C as in Charlie, O as in Oliver, slash. All right, we're in the home stretch here. Ready? Capital A as in Albert, lowercase m as in Mary, capital E as in elephant, lowercase w as in Washington, capital B as in Bob, lowercase I as in Isaac, and lowercase e as in elephant. All right? So the 22 characters should be https://p2a.co/ A, lowercase m, capital E, lowercase w, capital B, lowercase I-E. At that website, you will find a series of boxes where you'll just input a little bit of your information, your name, your zip code, your phone number, your email, and then you're just going to hit the send button. And what that is going to do is that is going to send, provided that you are a Pennsylvania, that you input a Pennsylvania address, that is going to send a blast email to, as we say in Italian, un sacco di legislators, a bunch of legislators in Pennsylvania and a bunch of media personnel in Pennsylvania, registering our objection, our outrage over this campaign of damnatio memoriae, not only against the greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, the first civil rights activist of the Americas, the Catholic paragon, Christopher Columbus, but also against our Italian heritage and indeed our American heritage. So you don't have to be Italian to send this blast email to your legislators. All you have to do is care about the truth, because that's what we're fighting for here, folks. The world falls apart when you don't tell the truth. All right, so the fight for the truth, specifically this campaign that we're fighting over Christopher Columbus, the reason we have Christopher Columbus University here on Radio Voice Italia, the fight is not just local. It's not just happening in Philadelphia. It's not just happening in Pennsylvania. It's happening all across the country. In fact, it's happening all across the world. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So today, one of the things we're going to talk about, and you've heard it mentioned, I'm sure, if not by me in my previous episode, but in the news, there's a lawsuit going on in Philadelphia, a federal civil rights lawsuit about this campaign of damnatio memoriae, this discrimination against Italian Americans and so forth. One of the parties in the lawsuit is a conglomeration of Italian American organizations, at least one of which has international chapters. So Philitalia International is one of the member organizations of the Conference of Presidents of Major Italian American Organizations, and the Conference of Presidents is one of the plaintiffs in the suit. And so member organization Philitalia International has chapters in South America, in Canada, in Europe. Also, the Speaker of the House of Liguria in Italy has offered his assistance in this fight in the United States, in this lawsuit, in any way he can help. And also, the mayor of Genoa is helping out. The mayor of Genoa wrote a letter to the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, to which, I hasten to point out, the Columbus, Ohio mayor did not respond, exhorting the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, that if the mayor of Columbus, Ohio is intent on tearing down the statue of Christopher Columbus, then the mayor of Ohio should send the statue to Genoa. And the mayor of Genoa has vowed that he will re-erect the Christopher Columbus statue in Christopher Columbus's hometown of Genoa in honor of that great man, right in the main square. Now, the mayor of Columbus, Ohio ignored the letter so far, but my point in telling you all of this is that this fight is global. It's worldwide. It is the world against the mayor of Philadelphia. It's not just some select plaintiffs. So we're going to get to that in a moment. We're going to talk a little bit more about the lawsuit and of other more local matters. But before we get to that, I want to give you some news around the country. Some of it is good news and some of it is bad news. So let's start with the good news. Connecticut Bill number 6652 to eliminate Christopher Columbus Day in Connecticut died in committee recently. So the defenders of Christopher Columbus's legacy have won their first victory in this battle for Western culture, marking an important turning point in this campaign of the culture war. So that's our first bit of good news. And there's some more good news. Chicago's Grant Park Christopher Columbus statue may be returned to its rightful place in Columbus Plaza in Chicago. Last year, Chicago removed not one, not two, but 3 Christopher Columbus statues in the city limits. The aforementioned Grant Park statue, a statue in Arrigo Park in Little Italy, and a statue at 93rd Street and Exchange Avenue in South Chicago. Mayor Lori Lightfoot removed the Grant Park statue in the middle of the night last July. Sound familiar to you, Philadelphians? And, as it turns out, without any legal authority to do so. Sound familiar? I think we're starting to see a pattern here. Well, Chicago's Joint Civic Committee of Italian Americans, the JCCIA, through their attorneys, filed what is called a Freedom of Information Act request. In the business, we call that a FOIA request. And through the response to their FOIA request, they discovered that the city of Chicago and the JCCIA have had a long-standing agreement on the books, which reads, and I quote, "The Park District will, in perpetuity, obtain the written approval of the JCCIA before making any substantial change to Columbus Plaza or the Columbus statue," end quote. President Ron Onesti of the JCCIA has, pursuant to this agreement, called for the city of Chicago to return the statue of Christopher Columbus to its original location in Grant Park. If Mayor Lightfoot fails to comply with this demand, the JCCIA will file suit, just like the Conference of Presidents of major Italian American organizations and the 1492 Society and others in Philadelphia did against the city of Philadelphia and its mayor. All right, but it's not all good news. While there are some hopeful turning points in this war, there's plenty of bad news. For example, on April 26, 2021, the Oregon State House passed House Bill 2526A, replacing Christopher Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day, a misnomer since the tribal peoples of the Americas were not indigenous to the Americas. They migrated here from Asia over the Bering Strait on ice bridges that were formed in the Ice Age, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. The tribal peoples of the Americas were, in fact, the first colonists of the Americas. And Columbus detractors hate it when I say that, even though it's the truth, because Columbus detractors talk a big game against colonialism. They really try to vilify colonialism. But if it weren't for colonialism, everybody in the world would still be living shoulder to shoulder, very tightly in one specific place in Africa. So people colonize, people move out, and they go elsewhere. It's just a human tendency. Well, anyway, so this Oregon State House bill being passed is bad news, and this bad news is nothing new. As it turns out, the elimination of Christopher Columbus Day began with the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s, when the Ku Klux Klan tried to eliminate Christopher Columbus Day as a holiday and tried to pull down statues to Christopher Columbus. The KKK hated Italians and Catholics also. The Klan was unsuccessful for 70 years until, in 1992, their legacy was reborn in Berkeley, California, when that city stopped celebrating Christopher Columbus Day. And since Berkeley's decision, 12 states and the District of Columbia, which is named after Christopher Columbus, replaced Christopher Columbus Day with either Indigenous Peoples Day or the equally incorrectly named Native American Day. Similarly, the tribal colonists of the Americas are not native to the Americas. And more than 130 cities across the country have followed like lemmings in this Ku Klux Klan legacy to eliminate Christopher Columbus Day, all based on the lie that Christopher Columbus was a racist, rapist, maimer, murderer, slave or slave owner, grifter, and genocide heir. Ladies and gentlemen, ignorance now drives government policy. Welcome to the 21st century. All right, so that's the news around the country and around the world. Let's turn to our local news, and to bring that to us, we have a very, very special guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe you like to watch legal dramas on television. I never did, being a lawyer. I just can't get into them. But it's because it's what I do for a living, right? So who wants to watch a TV show about what you do for a living? However, if you are a fan of those things, the people who are featured most prominently in legal dramas are the attorneys who show up in the courtroom and face down the judge and face down opposing counsel. And in this local fight in Philadelphia, that man is George Bochetto, Esquire of Bochetto and Lentz. However, behind these people who are donning the armor and going into the courtroom, there are unsung heroes, the people who are helping out with the legal research, people that are helping out with writing the petitions and the legal briefs. And let me tell you, I have spent a very long time as an appellate attorney, and I can tell you that this is hard work and critical work. And we have just such an unsung hero with us today, Mr. Matthew Minsky, Esquire of the Bochetto and Lentz law firm. Mr. Minsky, welcome to Christopher Columbus University, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Petrone, and thank you for that introduction.
You're very welcome. And please call me Rob. We've spoken a lot over the time, and we're always very formal with each other. So I would like to now formally invite you to call me Rob henceforth.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.
And so if I may call you Matt, thank you. Please tell us, what exactly is your position there at Bochetto and Lentz?
Sure. So I'm an associate with Bochetto and Lentz. I first started with them as a law clerk in 2019. And then after I graduated law school, which has been a year now, actually a year to the day, that I have been with Bochetto and Lentz as an attorney.
Okay, now let me say something to the audience. You're a recent law school grad, and the audience may be saying to themselves, "Oh my goodness, it's such a young man," and But let me tell you something, folks. I say this from experience. When one graduates from law school, one knows the most law one will ever know in one's life. Then you start working in a particular field, and you start to hyper-focus on that field, and all of this knowledge just starts to get lost in the cobwebs and eroded by the sands of time. So please do not consider Mr. Minsky's paucity of years to count against him. Quite the contrary. He knows more about the law right now than he ever will in his life. So, Matt, for those who have not gone to law school and may not be familiar with our terminology, could you please explain, what does that mean to be an associate?
Sure. So to be an associate at a law firm involves critical research and time spent, delving into these different legal issues, that many of the other attorneys might not be familiar with. So you're the one peeling back, these older cases from the early 1900s or even late 1800s and seeing how they jive with today's law. It also consists of legal drafting of briefs, appeals, complaints, discovery. So it's really a wide variety of drafting of different types of briefs and litigation, and just experiencing it all thrown at you at once.
Right. And what is the difference between an associate and a partner?
Sure. So an associate is, does not have an equity stake in the firm itself. They are more of an employee of the law firm, doing a lot of the groundwork, less of the administrative work.
Okay. And you said that you started out as a law clerk. So again, for our listeners who aren't lawyers, what does that mean?
So as a law clerk, I couldn't go in front of judges. I couldn't take depositions. I was more relished to the legal research end of things, and doing early drafts of complaints and briefs. Okay,
but now you are a full-fledged attorney. You've got a license to practice law, and you are a valued member of the Bochetto and Lentz team as an attorney. So the firm of Bochetto and Lentz is actually representing the parties in this lawsuit, representing the plaintiffs in this lawsuit. And the plaintiffs are the people who are suing, and the other parties in the lawsuit are the defendants. These are the people who are defending against the suit. Could you please explain to the listeners who are the plaintiffs and who are the defendants in this lawsuit?
Sure. So the plaintiffs in this lawsuit is the local 1492 society, run by Jody Della Barba. And the other large plaintiff is the Conference of Presidents of Major Italian-American Organizations, which is a national and actually international organization that represents the interests of 50 plus smaller Italian organizations. And they've all joined together to retain our services in order to combat injustice with regard to Italian Americans that have been discriminated against.
Yes, if I could just interrupt you there for a moment. The Conference of Presidents of Major Italian American Organizations, while it has approximately 50 official members, it recently, in February, held a summit at which over 350 Italian American organizations across America, at least one of which has international chapters, attended. And these organizations mobilized under the Conference of Presidents. So are those the only plaintiffs in the suit?
No, we actually also have with us is Philadelphia Council Member Mark Squilla, and we're fortunate to have him because he brings an interesting position, or standing, should I say, in the lawsuit, considering he's part of the very government that the mayor should have consulted when making this decision. So given that we have an actual council member as part of the plaintiffs, it further adds credibility to our claims that, you can't just run off and do this one man.
Right. Yes. Now, you mentioned the claims, and I want to get to that in a minute, but I still have some preliminary questions. So we recently have a new plaintiff joining the suit. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So we recently had the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, Sons and Daughters of Italy, join us as well. They filed a motion to intervene, it's referred to as, and they, fortunately, the judge promptly granted their admission, so they'll be joining us as a plaintiff as well.
That's wonderful. And if I'm not mistaken, they've actually set forth a few additional allegations to add to the claims. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So
we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to do this methodically for folks that are not attorneys. This can be complicated stuff. So those are the plaintiffs in the suit. Those are the people who are suing, and the Bochetto Lentz law firm is representing those folks. And the other party in the suit, the defendants. Who are the defendants in the suit? Who are defending against the lawsuit?
The defendants that we named is first the city of Philadelphia, and next Mayor James Kenney.
These are the parties being sued.
Correct.
Okay. And so the Bochetto Lentz law firm is not representing the city of Philadelphia. It's not representing Mayor Kenney. It's not representing those defendants. The Bochetto Lentz law firm is representing the plaintiffs, the Italian American organizations. Also, Councilman Squilla is joined in as a plaintiff, and so forth. And the Bochetto Lentz law firm is representing the plaintiffs pro bono. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot of our actual Columbus lawsuits, we represent them pro bono.
Now, for those listeners who are not attorneys and who do not speak Latin, could you please explain what that means, pro bono?
Yeah, so pro bono is the providing of legal services without charge for the benefit of the public.
That is beautiful. And ladies and gentlemen, let me make a point here. Litigation is not free. It is quite expensive. And pro bono doesn't mean that there's no expense. It just means that the party being represented is not being asked to pay for it. So what this means is the Bochetto Lentz law firm is paying out of pocket to preserve our heritage. It is doing this as a service. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you still have your pad and your pen handy, because here's what I'm going to ask of you. All right. And you're not ever going to hear me ask you for money. But at the end of this interview with Mr. Minsky, I'm going to ask Mr. Minsky to give you the address of the law firm. It's 1524 Locust Street. I'll just tell you that now. But we're going to give it to you in greater detail at the end of Mr. Minsky's interview. And I'm going to make a request that if you're listening and you care about this issue, that you make a little donation or a big donation or whatever you can spare to help defray the costs. So getting back to the lawsuit. So we now know who the parties are, and we talked about the claims. Could you please tell us, first of all, what is the lawsuit challenging in sort of broad terms?
Yeah, so on January 27th of this year, Mayor Kenney signed an executive order that basically said, hereby the day declared Columbus Day is now being replaced with Indigenous Peoples Day. So by doing that, what he did effectively was take a holiday celebrated by one ethnic group and replaced it directly with a holiday recognizing another ethnic group.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that that one racial group is being given a benefit to the detriment of another group in this country? Are we not in the United States of America?
I know. I asked the same question when I saw the order. All
right. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just shocked to hear that. Go on, please.
No, you're correct. So upon receiving that order, we sat down and we thoroughly reviewed the law. I mean, it was clear up front that this was a violation of the Constitution. So immediately we put that as count one. Outside of that, there were multiple other state violations of state law in addition to local Philadelphia law.
Now, the suit, correct me if I'm wrong, also sets forth which provisions of the city charter and state law that the plaintiffs are saying this executive order violates. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and specifically, these are the provisions. Well, let me actually broaden that. So, as it turns out, mayoral executive orders cannot supersede state law. Isn't that true?
That is correct.
And that's under. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
We're just going to say that the mayor of the city is required to, confine his laws and the rules that he makes within the bounds that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has set for him.
And that's based on the supremacy clause, right, in the Constitution, which says that the larger body of government has powers that smaller bodies of government cannot supersede. So, in other words, federal law supersedes state law. So no state can create a law that is contrary to federal law. And state laws supersede municipal ordinances. No city can promulgate an ordinance that violates state law or federal law, and so forth. Did I have that accurately?
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
All right, and so that's part of the reason why we're saying that this executive order by the mayor is in violation of state law, is in violation of the supremacy clause. Because what is it that state law says that the parties are saying the executive order violates?
Yeah, so there are two statutes, state statutes, that declare Christopher Columbus Day a state holiday that should be recognized by all persons of the Commonwealth. So there's two statutes to this effect, not just one. So for the mayor to think that he has the authority to just simply sign a local Philadelphia executive order overriding that state statutes, those two state statutes, I mean, that's just simply, against the structure of our system.
Yes, the state law and so forth. And indeed, against the city charter, right? Because doesn't the city charter say that the mayor must act within the limits of the laws of the General Assembly and has to actually even work with city council on certain issues? Am I wrong in that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And it says that anything that impacts the affairs of the city, he must run by city council.
And would you say that this falls under that category of affairs of the city?
Most certainly. Any holiday recognized by a city should be run by the legislative branch of that city. It shouldn't be a mayor's decision which holidays a city can recognize.
All right. Now, has the city of Philadelphia responded yet to the complaint that the plaintiffs filed in federal court?
They have not. They've actually asked for an extension to reply. So what we've done is we've worked with them and we've given them until May 12th to respond to our complaint.
Okay, that's what, about 2 weeks?
Exactly.
And how much time did they ask for?
They asked for actually a month.
A month. So they actually asked for double the amount of time that the parties thought, that the opposing party thought was reasonable.
Correct.
Okay. And apparently they thought it was reasonable too because they agreed to 2 weeks.
Yes.
How very interesting. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're living in Philadelphia and you're wondering why it takes so long for your trash to be picked up on trash day, that may give you some insight. All right. So let's move on to some other things that the Bochetto and Lentz law firm is involved in this critical fight. There is a statue of Christopher Columbus in Marconi Plaza in South Philadelphia. And I want to clear up a misconception that some folks may have, some folks who may have moved out to the suburbs, or perhaps they haven't gone far from their front door during the shutdown. A lot of people have said that the statue has been taken down, and I want to assure you it has not been taken down. The statue still stands in Marconi Plaza, but there's a big but to this. And Mr. Minsky, what is going on in just physically, in terms of physical infrastructure? What would people see when they pass by Marconi Plaza?
Yeah, so what the city has done is they've constructed a wooden box around the statue, so it can't be viewed.
A wooden box like a coffin?
That's a good way to describe it, Rob. It looks exactly like a coffin.
So they killed Christopher Columbus without taking down the statue. They sort of found a clever loophole, you might say.
Well, they're certainly trying, but we're confident that the coffin will be removed.
Now, why did they put this coffin around him? What was their rationale for that?
Their rationale was that the statue poses a public safety issue. In their terms, exactly, actually. So they thought that by covering the statue with this wooden coffin, that it would protect the public.
Well, that's interesting. So tell us about the litigation regarding the Christopher Columbus statue in Marconi Plaza.
Sure. So we are actually at a standstill at the moment, simply because we're on appeal at the Commonwealth Court. We previously asked for a preliminary injunction, simply saying, please don't remove the statue from Marconi Plaza until we finish this litigation and, been able to present our case to a judge.
At least until we finish this litigation. Ideally, never remove it, but at least until we've got this litigation settled. All right. And what exactly are we appealing in Commonwealth Court?
Yeah. So at first, when we first asked for the injunction, we were given it in an order. And in that same order, we were promised that we were able to proceed with normal court process, which includes a hearing. Mm-hmm. So once we saw that order, we began to prepare for our hearing. We put together our experts, our witnesses. We were ready to go. And all of a sudden, we got an order shortly thereafter declining our request. So that is what we're appealing from. But interestingly, in our request, we cite cases and statutes that demonstrate that this is for the common pleas court to hold a hearing on and decide. It can't be simply delegated to the Board of License and Review as that court suggested. And this is written in the statute. It's actually called the Sunshine Act. Mm-hmm. And by its very terms, the common pleas court must hear our position.
That's very interesting. So the Sunshine Act says the common pleas court has to hear this, and the common pleas court tried to pass the buck to the Board of License and Inspections.
You're absolutely correct.
Unbelievable. All right. Now, in the meantime, we've had a marble expert examine the statue. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Matt?
Yeah, sure. So Angelo's Granite and Marble from South Philadelphia were kind enough to inspect the statue. They're marble experts. They've been working with marble for decades now. So what they did was they came out to the statue. We had the city take down the boarding, and they got up close and personal and evaluated the marble itself, took pictures, notes, and drafted a beautiful report for us that supports our lawsuit entirely.
Okay, very good. Now, there's also an obelisk dedicated to Christopher Columbus at Philadelphia's Penn's Landing waterfront. And the obelisk still stands and it's still visible, but the base of the obelisk bears the name of Christopher Columbus and indicates that the obelisk is erected in his honor. And it also bears the name of all of the Italian Americans who had the obelisk erected. And the base of the obelisk, the name of Christopher Columbus, the names of all of these Italian Americans have been covered up with black blocks of wood. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the pun is not lost on me. If you don't know what the black block is, and that's block without the K, because they already have enough Ks in Ku Klux Klan, but look up black block. And I don't often encourage people to look things up on Wikipedia because anybody can edit Wikipedia, and the black block is very proactive in doing that. But in this instance, I'm going to urge you to look up the black block on Wikipedia and even see what they admit about themselves. This is a loose confederation across the world of very radical organizations that are in many respects against Western culture. And so to see these black blocks of wood covering this icon of Western culture, the name of this icon of Western culture, and the people who spent their hard-earned money and effort to have this obelisk erected, is a great indignity. So is there any litigation surrounding the Columbus obelisk, Matt?
Yes, there is. Actually, we were retained by the American 500 Corporation against the Delaware River Water Corporation to uphold an agreement that they took on in 1997 that outlined the very terms by which they can treat and care for that obelisk.
Sounds very much like the situation I talked about earlier in Chicago. And where does the litigation stand right now?
Right now, we are in the phase of discovery. So actually, as of yesterday, we just served them with their first set of consolidated discovery requests.
Okay, very good. And for people who are not attorneys, discovery is what?
Discovery is where we ask for documents such as text messages, emails, everything that we can get our hands on that talks about this obelisk or other ones in the city. On top of that, we ask them a number of questions, question and answer type.
Okay, so that's even sounding more like the Chicago situation where they made a Freedom of Information law request and discovered this agreement pursuant to that request. And so Philadelphia isn't the only place where the Bochetto Lentz law firm is fighting this fight. You're also trying to mediate a similar situation in Pittsburgh, another city trying to erase Christopher Columbus from history. What's going on there?
Yeah, so we're in the midst of mediation right now. Unfortunately, to date, the city hasn't been budging from their position that the statue has to be removed from Shenley Park at all costs. So it looks like the mediation may turn to litigation very shortly. But we're comfortable in those waters, and we are ready to move into litigation because we have the facts and we have the law on our side. So we're ready to move forward in that regard.
For heaven's sakes, this battle is being fought on so many fronts. It's unbelievable. And the Bochetto Lentz law firm is fighting all of these battles for the Italian-American community. And here in Philadelphia, they're representing the many plaintiffs in the federal civil rights lawsuit pro bono. They're doing it out of pocket. So look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask in a moment that Mr. Minsky end by giving you the address of the law firm, so that you can maybe send a contribution. Any contribution would be greatly appreciated. But I want to make a point to you folks. Our poor working class ancestors donated out of their threadbare pockets to have many of these statues and monuments erected to begin with. The least we can do as modern Italian Americans, having worked our way up to being the very foundation of the American middle class and the embodiment of the American dream, is to donate to help keep these heirlooms of our heritage in their rightful places. All right, I'm stepping off my soapbox. Mr. Minsky, would you be so kind as to give our listeners the address of the Bochetto Lentz law firm in Philadelphia? And ladies and gentlemen, Bochetto is spelled, you have your pens and pads ready, it's Bochetto. Okay, Bochetto. And then there's the and symbol, the ampersand. And the other partner is Lentz, Lentz, comma, PC for private counsel, okay? And Mr. Minsky, could you give the address, please?
Sure, our address is 1524 Locust Street, Philadelphia, PA, 19102.
1524 Locust Street. Locust, like the insect, Philadelphia, PA, 19102. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate everything that you're doing and everything that you have explained to us, just from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me.
It was my pleasure and my honor. And that's today's class. For more news, articles, and resources about Christopher Columbus as the first civil rights activist of the Americas, icon of Western culture, paragon of Catholic virtue, and greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, visit preservecolumbus.us. That's Preserve Columbus, rendered as one word, .us. And post a little note of appreciation for our webmaster, Tom LaCosta. I'm il professore, Robert Petrone. A presto.
The Jersey Shore has fun and sun, sand and sea, and Radio Voice Italian.